Hello YouTube, my name is SDG Videos, and welcome back to another Let's Talk series. So, for today's Let's Talk, we will be talking about gun control. So, I know I said this in the last video, but I'd just like to stress that the end of this video is just my opinion. You can disagree for your own opinions, and I'd love to hear what you think about in the comment section below. With that said, let's move into gun control. And first, I'd like to start off by introducing what gun control is and a few misconceptions about it. So, gun control is how firearms, usually in terms of purchasing, is regulated. So, whether you have to be above a certain age to purchase it, whether you need a certain license, whether certain things have higher taxes, those are gun control laws, which help control guns. Some misconceptions are the debate is not about whether we should have or not have gun control, because gun control is a necessity. Otherwise, any human being, no matter what they've done in their life, could get any firearm, no matter how powerful a firearm it is, whether it be something as simple as a handgun or whether it be a missile launcher. So, also, what is very important about this debate is that it's a very unique problem for America, because guns, what makes this such a unique issue is the Constitution. And so what's unique about this is in the Constitution, it's ingrained in us and in the Constitution, in the Second Amendment, that we have the right to bear arms. In fact, I'm going to read out the specific wording just for clarification. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state or the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So that's the exact wording, and that what's so unique about this issue is since we were made as a country, it's been ingrained in us that guns kind of equaled freedom. And at the time of the Revolution, the most powerful weapon was a musket or a cannon, and people had muskets and you couldn't afford a cannon. Now I can go up if I'm rich, afford a very, very dangerous weapon. It does not necessarily mean that I should have it. So what I'm trying to get at is at the time, people were not kind of seeing what it was. And a lot of the debate is about the Constitution. Now, other countries don't necessarily have this problem because they don't have a Constitution, and less of their independence was founded upon weapons. And I don't think there are many countries that have their independence founded on weapons close to the way that America has, which is 100% completely founded upon weapons. With that said, I'll start by talking about why some people believe that there should be less gun control laws, and then I'll move into why people believe that there should be more laws, and then my personal opinion and what I've learned through researching this. Alright, so the first one is less gun control laws. First point is that gun control is protected by the Second Amendment. So, as I said, the Second Amendment is something that's been very deeply ingrained in us as a country since our birth, and that's just because of the way that our freedom was earned. Our freedom was earned by violence through weaponry, and to say that we're going to take away this right that you've had for hundreds of years and the country has really evolved with, in a sense, and I think that that's something that these people think is not a good idea. Because if you think about it, the Second Amendment, that's right next to the First Amendment. The First Amendment is things like religious freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and those things theoretically were as important at the time of the writing of the Constitution as owning a firearm was. So I'm not going to really talk about how you could counter this. I'll talk about that more in the next point. Second point is that it stops crime and it makes people feel safe. So this is, some people in support of less gun control laws would actually put this as a primary point because there's some flaws to the Constitution debate. There's some flaws to the Constitution point, but anyway, it stops and makes crime and makes people feel more safe. So, what this means is not necessarily stops crime is kind of exaggeration. if you were debating against someone and there was a judge, I would recommend using a term like stops crime, because while you can't really support that stopping crime, that taking away people's firearms would make the crime rate increase. Well, you can't really argue for that side. Saying something like that is rather powerful. But the bigger part is that it makes people feel safe and more confident. So, for example, if I was going to go to a place to buy a product and it was in the middle of not a nice part of town and I didn't have some form of protection, this isn't necessarily applying to guns, but if I didn't have some form of protection, then I would not feel comfortable going into that part of town. And what this does is it limits what people can do based on their weaponry ownership. And while it's not only to weaponry ownership, there are like other things. For example, if you were in a motorcade of police cars, you'd feel comfortable going there. If you had a bulletproof car and you feel comfortable going there. If you're going there in a helicopter, you feel comfortable going there. But it applies specifically to weapons because they're basically the easiest and probably the most effective way that a normal citizen can protect themselves. And so the last point for this debate is that it helps the economy. And this point's a little bit, there's something unique about this point, where you want to stress, if you're talking about this issue, that it's more important that it helps lives, it's in the Constitution. You want to stress that far more than you say, oh, it makes money. But it does, it really does. As I said, the industry of guns has been ingrained in us as a country since the revolution. And while you might not have the most massive crash ever from this, you'd have a lot of jobs laid off. And 50 years in the future, yes, those jobs might be recovered, but the thing is that you would have not only a lot of money really kind of wasted, like think of buying like bulletproof motorcades and things like that, but the bigger thing is in 50 years after that, the economy would probably, hopefully, return back to a normal state. And you wouldn't be making as much money as you could. So this kind of point is a little bit shaky, but if it's used correctly, it can be a very powerful finalizer. So just to conclude, protected by the Second Amendment, makes people feel safe and able to stop crime, and it is good for the economy. Now, you don't have to interpret these points the way I did. You can use different points, but these are what I see as the three strongest points for this side. Now, the other side, more gun control laws, which is, I'm just going to say it right now, the side that I personally agree with. But the first, we'll get into it later. So, the first point is that the first right is not the right to own any weapon. And what this means is that, as I said, saying that people have the right to keep and bear arms and it shall not be infringed upon, that's basically saying I can own any weapon, no matter what, and the government can't stop me from doing it. And we know that is just not true at all. It can't own any weapon. I can't own a gun. No matter what type of gun it is, I personally, as a teenager, cannot own a weapon. So that's some, and also when people bring up the Constitution, a lot of these people bring it up as like something that should be followed word for word, and that's just not true. Saying that we have the infinite right to free speech isn't true. The example that always comes to my mind is you can't shout fire in the middle of a movie. People would get injured, they'd trip, they'd fall, they could definitely injure themselves. So, Constitution, as I also said earlier, is not something that was planned for the kind of development and kind of culture that we live in today. It was designed for a kind of different purpose almost. Now, we can never tell if the Founding Fathers meant for it to be rewritten, changed, or taken word for word, but we do know that it doesn't apply word for word today. Because what would they think about internet usage? I mean, I could say, oh, I only follow laws in the Constitution, so therefore I don't have to follow any internet laws. I mean, obviously that's illegal, but that's not really the point. Because the Constitution is not some type of and be all end all for laws. Secondly, it actually reduces the number of gun deaths because crime rates. This is kind of a debated idea, a debated piece of statistics, but it's unclear whether crime rates would actually rise or fall with gun control laws being developed. So I personally believe that they would be reduced because it makes it more difficult for people to obtain weapons, and dangerous people to obtain weapons. Also, these dangerous people, you could say, oh, this dangerous person rushes at you with a knife. But that's a lot better than this dangerous man standing 100 meters away with a gun in a crowded area. And guns are something that, while used perfectly correctly, can be a wonderful tool, almost in a sense. They're never going to ever be used 100% correctly because we're humans. We make mistakes. That's how it works. Police, people who've trained for decades in law enforcement or in military, still will never be perfect at weapons. I mean, think of like a sniper. A sniper's never going to be able to hit every single shot it takes. And the last point is it actually stands in the way of law enforcement efforts. And this is a rather interesting point. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but I will do my best. So, think of what could happen if there's a shooter in a mall, right? And I have a little weapon in my holster, a little shin holster, right? The shooter comes out, starts shooting up a mall, right? Police got called, police come, they make a perimeter, they do their police thing, start coming in with the SWAT team, right? I pull out my shin gun, I go bang, bang, bang. Maybe I hit him, maybe I do a perfect shot, maybe I miss. Thing is, it would be much, much, much more safe to have police go in. Because maybe the second that you pull out your gun, he takes a hostage, and you don't know how to deal with the hostage situation. Maybe you don't end up pulling out your gun, he ends up shooting you, he takes your thing and takes all your ammunition. That would make the situation worse. And while it's difficult to explain, the more you look at the contentions for this debate, I think you'll be able to understand this more. Now, these are my notes, very minimal, but now what I've personally learned and what I personally think. So I said, I personally believe that there should be more gun control laws, and I think that it definitely does depend on how you're raised, and that's what makes this debate so controversial, is that everyone was raised in a different way, and America is such a varied land in terms of cultural beliefs. I don't honestly know if we're ever going to reach an end to this debate, because no matter what we do, there will still be families that have it deeply ingrained in their blood to use weaponry as as ways of survival, as ways of entertainment. But that's not a bad thing, and firearms are never objectively bad. You just can't say that, because nothing is necessarily always bad. But I think to reduce the amount of firearm usage is valuable and important because it allows the civilian to feel far more comfortable in their territory. And while you could say it relinquishes someone's ability to protect themselves, the point is not to have someone running out with you at a shotgun, go bam, 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 the second that you step on their property. The point is that humans should deal with it in a civil manner. There's a reason that we have a government, and it's not so that we can have vigilantes running around. Now, this sounds a little bit politicized and governmental, but the point is, the bottom line is, guns are no longer necessary for a standard civilian, because when these laws were made, which was way back 300, 400 years ago, the laws were designed to help a standard civilian be able to have his own word heard. And now that we have things like social media, where posting something, millions of people can see it, just like this video, hopefully. Get this video up trending, folks. But the point is, that was someone's power. To be able to stand up to someone and say, I can protect myself at night, is completely different in today's day and age when we don't have lawless people coming into your room and killing you while you sleep. It's not something that, that probably does happen to some extent, but no matter if you own a weapon or not, you can still get injured, and then that person has access to weaponry. Because no one will ever perfectly use weaponry, as I said, but the chance of someone who's trained in weaponry for 10 years as opposed to someone who has had a little written exam to pass to be able to own a license, the difference is quite large in between them. With that said, as I said, I'd like to hear what you think about this. Please recommend your video, what would you like for me to do in the next video. I personally am thinking privacy rights or relationships of some sort. Also, if you have any questions in general about any topics, I'd love to hear them. With that said, please do not forget to leave a like, subscribe if you'd like to watch my videos. Please do check that bell so you get notifications, because I don't really have a standard upload schedule. And share this video to everyone who would like to see it. Thank you.